We can't talk about good things now.
Alrighty, and I think we're live. Yes, and good afternoon. Welcome to Smudcast number 236. This is a channel awesome video. This is about 2000. What is it? 2015, published
13.
in August. Wow, some time ago.
What was it? 13? Oh, was it updated?
It was re-uploaded because
it was re-uploaded. It was originally, I believe,
on the side to the YouTube channel.
Exactly. I believe it was originally July of 2013, I think. It should say it in the description.
Okay, well,
cool.
this is one of the more tolerable videos because a lot of channel awesome stuff is silly, wacky stuff that we've seen before in the past with odd takes. Sometimes they're okay takes, sometimes they're odd. This one is just him explaining what he thinks about video games as a form of high art, not just art. And we've talked about art and high art before, how one is considered just a form of aesthetics, and one is considered an exemplary form of culture. So you're talking about philosophy or some of the great painters and artists and sculptors of the days. So are video games considered that? And he goes through some of his thoughts. And the great thing about that is he's not a expert. He's not a gamer in that sense. He does play games, of course, but he's not like hardcore. He's not one of those gamers who like love the stuff. They play their favorite games, or they are always looking for the next game of a series or a console that they're into. So I'd say he's more of a casual gamer in that regard, not to be confused with casual gaming. So people who play casual titles on their phone or what have you. So he is more of a casual gamer. So he does have a console, this and that, and he talks about that. So this is a easy to go through video. It's only 12 minutes long, and we're mostly going to be talking about other things because there's so many things to talk about. You're talking about thousands and thousands of games out there that we were influenced by, and we consider art for multiple reasons. You're talking about characters, story, sound, music, voice acting, you name it. There's something artistic about that we were moved by, that we were influenced by. So it's going on the level of fanaticism, of course, because we're fans of stuff, and that's cool. So this is going to be nice for us, nice little exercise, and we're not laughing hysterically, we're not pointing the finger or screaming at the camera. Yeah, we're not screaming at the microphone.
You say that with me on the panel.
Yeah. So
you're not driving this time, Bears, are you?
No. Unless some cunt from Portland manages to crash into my second level apartment.
Don't tempt fate.
Don't. We don't.
So, and you can do some crazy things in GTA. Just
we don't need Bears Road Rage 2 Electric Boogaloo.
So we're going to try and get everyone to talk because it's a great video to bounce ideas off and talk about things you love and why. And nothing really comes up like if I were to have a stream about the best stories in video game history. Like that would take some time. So we're not going to do that, but we can bring that up if we like. So it depends on what he talks about. So let's get going.
Before we start, I want to say if things like Turtle Dream and a banana being duct taped to a canvas can be considered art, then yes, video games are also art.
Sure. In the most basic sense, yeah.
Sure. We're talking about different genres and different media, of course. So
exactly.
Yeah, that's totally cool. So let's get going. Hey, Jake, how's it going? Video games are rat. I agree. I don't know if you're being facetious or you literally always screw up your spelling.
It's good rat. It's good rat.
Yeah, it's good rat.
All right. Okay. All right.
Yeah, he means that they're art. Yeah.
Okay.
It's art. It's good art.
Thanks, Jake. Joe Crazy. Oh, yeah, hey, the guy who gave Lindsay a career. Oh, yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, just to have that follow up with this.
Who the hell is Lindsay?
I don't know.
He's already blocking things out from his head.
Oh, that's that one chick that got her fetus looking mutilated, right?
Okay.
And
I don't know
made a movie out of
that
it.
is not that doesn't narrow it down anyway.
Well, I was gonna say she's a white woman, but that also doesn't narrow it down.
Narrow it down even, no, Bess.
All right. So let's get started. This will take some time because we're a full house and we will talk a lot. So let's go. Oh, that's loud.
Hello, I'm the Nostalgia Critic guy. Remember it so you don't have to. The last video game I've ever played all the way through was Super Mario Bros. Wii. And before that, it was Metroid Prime 2 on the GameCube.
Okay.
That's an entire system later. That's not to say I don't dabble in a little Mario Kart, Marvel vs. Capcom 3, or at my most embarrassing...
No, that's your most embarrassing. Marvel vs. Capcom 3 is pretty fucking terrible. Speaking as a fighting game fan, the only thing worse is Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite.
Yeah.
Give it a moment.
Yeah.
Give it a moment.
The whole lineup
It's gonna get worse.
sounds very random, and if if he's trying to prove his gamer cred here, that's a bit pathetic.
No, he's not.
The exact
He's just-
opposite, yeah.
That's
Also, why are his teeth
fine.
so big?
It's
Why are his teeth so
okay.
big?
It's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's
As long as
fine.
he didn't say,
He played
as long
some
as he didn't
games.
say, I play Candy
Yeah.
Crush and Wordscape constantly, so I know about gaming. It'd be,
Right.
yeah, okay.
This
Sit
is
down.
fine.
Silence.
There's nothing wrong with playing fighting games. Obviously, we can argue
I
that
love fighting games, but I love good fighting games. That's the thing.
that's cool. I mean, we all have our own preferences. That's what I like about
Yeah.
video gaming. There's something for everyone, whether you know Marvel fighting games or arcade Marvel fighting games or whatever. It's fine. It's cool. It's totally cool. So him giving us, I played this, I played this, I played that. I don't mind. It's totally cool.
Fine.
Yeah.
At least we know what level he's at.
It's just establishing his perspective on the question. That's it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Why have I
Things
never
for
noticed
recording
his name's
myself
Chicklet
playing
Teeth
the
before?
Michael Jackson experience in my pajamas, which you are not going
Please
to
never.
see.
Yeah, indeed we are not.
You showed more than we
I
needed.
did play a lot of video games growing up, but recently I've kind of fallen out of touch. And that I still try to keep a little on top of things by being a casual gamer here and there. I bring this up because it's
honest.
important to know my background when I ask a question that's been circulating the past few years. Are video games art? Now, on the one hand, this
No,
is a
not
stupid
this song,
question.
please.
You could easily say, of course it's art. Practically anything can be art. Just look at the definition. The expression or application of human creative skill and imagination, typically in a visual form such as painting or sculpture, or works produced by such skill and imagination. So hell, even the picture you did of a horsey when you were 5 years old technically counts as art. But I think what people really mean when they
My
ask this
dad
question
burned
is,
mine.
are video games high art?
Hardcore
Will
hawk.
they be remembered? Are they timeless? Do they say something relevant about life or humanity that will be relevant years later? That's what people are really trying to get down to. I must admit, I didn't really think too hard about this subject matter until I played the game Metroid Other M. Despite all the hype being built around it, the game pissed off a great number of fans and gamers. But not for the same reasons that it would have 20 years ago. The biggest complaint was that Samus, the badass bounty hunter and star of one of Nintendo's biggest franchises, has now been reduced to an overly emotional, yapping drama queen with dialogue more like a soap opera than a space opera.
Okay, so that's a good point because all that we've known for a lot of Nintendo games is they don't have much of a face or voice. And all of a sudden, Other M comes in, they give her a voice actor, they give her a plot, they give her all these characters, all these conflicts. And you're like, oh,
They represent her dead wrong.
They personify Samus as someone we weren't expecting to be personified as, and that sort of takes away from the mystique and the nostalgia of these spooky, like I think Super Metroid, one of the best games of
Super Metroid, yeah.
of that generation, I think.
Of all time.
Perhaps of all time. Like, it's a really fun game. Did it need a detailed story? No. It was fine. We understood what was going on. There was enough beats.
Cleverly, told the
Yeah, but
story through
it
visuals,
did still go out of its way to give a more clear representation of what was going on on a couple of occasions.
And the only reason I bring this point up is because he was talking about he recently played Echoes, which was Prime. Metroid Prime takes the same formula of Metroid, just brings it to 3D, first-person perspective, and just keeps everything the same. Castlevania-style exploration in space, in some worlds. And all the wonders of, I always say the scanning tool really brings out the lore and the storytelling just by having a scanning tool. So spinning around in 3D, 360 is one way to bring out the narrative in such a unique technique that involves gameplay as well as story progression. So that was cool for me. With M, they take the more cutscene approach to movies and storytelling in movies, where things happen, cutscene, etc., etc. So this is the problem.
Even those
that we
old
had.
games, they may not tell story much directly, but they still tell it through what happens in the game and the visual cues by themselves, by what level is connected to which is something I found Super Metroid be doing rather well. And in regards to character, I am not sure. I would have had to look up the dates, but I believe the manga to Samus was before Other M, and that established a wholly different character than we see in Other M.
That was, I don't know exactly, that came out during Prime, but I did remember reading the manga and the story of the Chozo and how she got her armor and how it works and how she had to learn how to use it.
That was actually rough. That was actually roughly. It was roughly around the time of Zero Mission, which was 2004, that the manga came out, more or less.
Okay. So this is interesting because when I evaluate a story, I talk about the story elements, and you say story in general, that means everything. And narrative. When you're talking about narrative, you're talking about the rendering of the story. So we have to consider the medium. We have to consider the format. Is there dialogue with Super Metroid? I don't think there was much dialogue, if any. And with Other M, there was all kinds of dialogue. There was all kinds of characterization, people running around and arguing and yada yada. And we're like, okay, this is no longer my Metroid. This is some other beast. There's some other things going on here that you have to wrap your brain around, and the personification of Samus does not feel right, the voice acting, etc. So we can say the story wasn't really that great, and the narrative wasn't really that great either. But then the other half of that is, this is a video game. Was the gameplay in Other M good? It was okay. They had some side-scrolling elements.
Fine, yeah.
Yeah, so there's the half element of game, and then the other half is story. What are you getting out of your experience? And it's the story aspect of Other M that just sort of doesn't quite fit the mustard, and we wanted to have an experience like we had in Super Metroid, because that was fantastic. Metroid Prime and the three of them were fantastic. Maybe not the third one as much, but they were all amazing. Some of the best escape sequences and boss battles in any game. That's how amazing they were. So this is the level, the standard that we compare to Other M because of that.
Yeah.
And that's the bias.
Yeah, well, one specific thing, it's like, we can all agree that Metroid, as of Super Metroid, pretty much set the standard for that epic feeling of, like, the boss fights, and especially the final boss, with how much of an impact it's supposed to have in regards to being the climax for the entire story, correct?
No, I've never played any Metroid game.
Well, I was asking more so Smud specifically.
Yeah, I mean.
Oh, okay. Well, fuck you then.
If you guys have not played,
I'm sorry.
There's a number of Super Nintendo games you guys should play on emulator, and Super Metroid is not quite the same because your keyboard's not going to work very well, but it's pretty exciting. It's pretty awesome, and I would say
overall,
these things are timeless the same way statues or statuettes are timeless in regard to considering them as art, because they have existed. You could put something in bronze, you could put something in marble, and they can last relatively forever. You know, they'll break down eventually, but we're talking about the elements. So with video games, they're digital. So if we put a magnet near a hard drive, it's toast. So the same concept, really. It's hot. To me, that's
like putting a sledgehammer to a bus.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So.
And there are Nostalgia Critic's question of whether games are timeless, video games are timeless, is essentially already answered with a clear yes. It's just a relatively young medium, but just as no, that wasn't the direction I wanted to go in. The thing is, there are more well-known pieces of art. Like, most people have heard of the Mona Lisa, for example. Many people have heard of the Thinking Man. Fewer people have heard of the Toteninsel, the Death Island by, I keep forgetting the artist. It hangs in Berlin right now. There are lesser known pieces. Of Fires in the Night by, I think it's a Rembrandt piece, in Hamburg. People know some of the artists sometimes, but they don't know all of the artworks, as there are video games that everybody's heard of, like Tetris. People at least know about who Super Mario is and what the games are generally about, like jumping, running and jumping. Oh, it's a jump and run. Huh. And then there are very special things that have some renown, are special favorites of many people, and it would be hard to argue them not being artistic pieces in their my English is failing me. In the whole of what they are, like Okami or Asura's Wrath. And I love mentioning Asura's Wrath because it is a bit of an underdog in the realm of video games. The storytelling is wonderful. It's a relatively simple fighting system. And it is probably one of the few games that ever did QuickTime events right. And I have to mention that because I hate QuickTime events, and in that game I loved them. So I think that's worth to mention that they did something right there.
Fortunately, it's balanced out by the fact you had to pay like $5 extra for the ending.
That is sadly true. But that is. I can attribute that to the.
I mean, that's not I agree that's not. It isn't representative of the entire product, but it is something
I don't like.
Up.
Yeah, I don't like the fact of that. Like I got my copy from a video store that was closing down, so I got a cheap copy for a PS3. And I didn't know about this part, that the last fourth of the game essentially is a DLC. Now, since I got it from a video store when it was closing down, that is, gave me the idea. Well, people were renting games from these kinds of stores, right? So, in that case, this might have ensured that the studios could make some extra buck from people renting the games. Not the nicest way, but I can make I can kind of understand why they tried that, but it's still scummy. Other than that, beautiful game, beautiful story, wonderful emotional range. And I'm a sucker for alternative mythology and history, and that is a lot of what this does. But I'm getting a bit lost in that. What I miss in Nostalgia Critic setup here, maybe it's still coming, but I doubt it because rarely people speak about this, is the difference and how it works together between art and design. Because if you've ever been around in an art university, where there's a lot of design students as well, they are very keen on not being conflated with the other. While there can be design process in art, it's not the case in all of art. Some things are just pure products of emotion and the moment, while design is more of a way to plan out and construct something, you could say. When you go into engineering, product design is mainly what it's used for. Communication design on websites is a form of design. Does that also incorporate art? Yeah, of course, in a way, because it's also about aesthetics. And there are a lot of fuzzy borders. There's a lot of overlap between these two terms, but they, especially in the video game topic, I believe there should be made a distinction of what we're doing, because video games are much like movies in the regard that it's a combination of several forms of elements of design and art on several layers, several types. We have sound design, we have music, we have set pieces, we have characters, we have writing. These are all things that come together, just like a stage play. Nobody will argue that a stage play is not art. we got to the point that we say, okay, movies can be art. Video games are just an extension of that. A board game, if we break it down, a video game is an automated board game in a way. A board game is first and foremost designed, because you need to lay out the rules and what's going on, what are the pieces, are there pieces in the first place, are we using cards, are we using anything else? And then we go into, well, how do we present the game? For example, chess pieces have looked way different throughout history. The rules have changed and all of that, but fundamentally, it's a question of how abstract do you go? How distinct do you go in your game? Like there are a lot of games, worker placement games, for example, that are technically very similar in the rules and what happens, but the skin, if you will, of the game is much different, and that is part of what gives the unique feel to a game. There is, and that's where we drift from pure design over into more artistic elements, is what I would say. And I'd say video games are, if anything, an amalgamation of several types of art and design that, if done right, will become timeless. If the balance is right, just like as is the case with some movies that are more remembered than others, like Aliens over other movies.
Right, and this is mostly about popularity, not necessarily quality. I can look at Statue of David by Michelangelo. Everyone knows that. Michelangelo is very famous, well known for that.
Yes.
But very few people know.
He was also a good turtle as well.
Yeah, well, that's another thing, because it's made popular. People know it in another form, and the name comes from somewhere else. But very few people know about the Statue of David by Bernini. If you don't know Bernini, he is the highest level of sculpture I could think of in the Italian style. If you compare what Michelangelo can do and a bunch of other wonderful artists back in the day, go 200 years in the future, go to Bernini, he is the quintessential, like there's no one compares to him, Italian style at least. So people know that, but once you see it, you're like, oh, I've seen that before. It's like, that's a Bernini? Oh, okay, cool. His stuff is fantastic. So there's still high art. Very few people can do amazing sculpture, but his is on a level much higher than everyone else. So compare that, and like Super Mario, the first iteration on the Nintendo, to Super Mario nowadays. It's night and day in the span of 30, 40 years.
Yes.
So,
and the same, and just to map this part out with the evolution of the art form, because you find that there comes about one absolute master once a couple centuries with either what is more renowned. In the case of Michelangelo, I think it was Michelangelo, with his pieces that are labeled the prisoners, his unfinished artwork. Those are not very well known, or rather as well known as the Statue of David. But they are absolute wonderful art pieces. But they are all, which is more like you're looking at a sculptor's sketches, his three-dimensional sketches, because his style of making of sculpting was much different than others. He wasn't planning it out, like designing, if you will. He truly saw the piece and was, as you would metaphorically say, freeing the statue from the rock. So he would just go into the rock and carve out specific pieces while the rest of it was still trapped inside. Completely different style than other people did. And that is kind of the appeal to this set called The Prisoners. I would suggest looking those up as well, because it's astonishing. Yeah. If I'm mixing up names of artists, please correct me.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty much.
Why is there someone yelling at Mark in the background?
It's
What'd you do this time, Mark?
Private matter.
All right. Here's Strawman. Thank you, sir. As a fan of the Dead or Alive series, I say yes, games are art. Okay.
Yeah, boy.
Yes,
yeah.
that is art.
Mm-hmm. Especially the volleyball one.
Oh yes.
All right, moving on.
That's my favorite kind of art.
To say fans were pissed was an understatement. But when it came down to the actual gameplay itself, people didn't seem to have that big a problem with it. Of course, some people didn't enjoy the playing part, but the focus of the criticisms was how poorly they represented the character and the story. When did this happen? Nobody used to question the motivations of a plumber going after a princess, or the storyline of two guys with guns stopping an alien invasion. But clearly, much more is expected now.
Because it's not just about the story.
Has naturally evolved. But many critics out there still declare that's just a modern, updated version of
Bro,
this.
are you telling me that people don't find cave paintings interesting?
Oh my God,
to understand the evolution of the craft is by comparing it to another craft that many people argued for years wasn't art: movies. For a long time, many art critics declared film as just a means of escape and entertainment, and nothing else. But as the art form advanced more and more, we saw filmmakers take chances by challenging audiences with new ways of telling stories and expressing ideas. Films could be disturbing, thought-provoking, enlightening, even breaking the bonds of the three-act structure and just expressing motion, dreams, or the subconscious. Because of this, it is very hard nowadays to find people who don't, in some form or another, see the possibility of film making great art.
I found the argument that it's just escapism, it's just pointless dabbling for the plebs or something, always as
elitist boomer talk that you should ignore.
It's just I just had the word. Bullshit. Definitely. But because all art does that. All art tickles your mind and your imagination. And
painting
whether
is
that
escapism, writing is
sculpture,
escapism.
that can even be some. Sometimes it can even be some postmodernist stuff because it just clicks something together. If that was the right term. They can even cubist paintings can do that because there are rules to these types of paintings. It's more of a they're actually more designed than just splattered on the canvas because they have to follow perfect rules of words fail me, balance and ratios, which you then find applied in which many people don't know. Cubism is applied in city building and renewing cities, and what colors are used to paint the buildings in order to make them to make a more pleasant neighborhood. Because it simply, by use of these color types and ratios, it uplifts the human mind and makes people feel better. That is quite surprising. It's an interesting side topic. Other than that, you see this go through all of history, where there are some people who look down on some new art form or new art style and think this is rubbish. I think that I don't know if that's just a story or whether that was actually the case, but I think Picasso wasn't very highly regarded in his day.
No, it took until after his death.
The whole impressionist thing was just thrown out as, what is this nonsense? And later on, it is the absolute art snobbery that just swoons about it. And I think that is partially because they are told that this is good stuff. Because what you find in there's a similar thing in cooking, by the way, which you can consider an art form if you like.
Yeah.
I know some does.
For there are certain simple, cheap meals that the plebs needed to survive, that have later on that people then moved away from because they could afford better food. Because we got into more prosperous times, and then you get your luxury restaurant that now serves dishes based on these old simple recipes for extraordinary prices. Because now it's special to eat these things.
Take a look at how expensive lobster is now. And like what, 150 years ago, it was considered like the trash of the sea.
Yeah, I think pizza has a similar story behind it, because it's the food of the commoners, and I think it was the pizza margherita that got this very honoring. It was named after. Don't ask me about the years and everything. I'm not firm on those. But I think it was a queen in Italy.
Yeah, Queen Margherita. Well, she wasn't Italian, but they made something for her in her honor, and they called it that. She wanted something to eat, and I think she was just she didn't want this usual stuff she had, and she just she asked the random baker or something. I don't know the exact story. Yeah, it's the Margherita of Savoy. That was the person.
And then she just wanted something, and that baker made her the very simple pizza margherita and named it after her later on because she really enjoyed it, and thus was elevated the pizza from a simple commoner's meal to everyone, including royalty, because one royal dared to eat it and like it. So now everyone likes it because it's now allowed to like it. So that's one of these weird societal strata things with fashion and royalty and what's allowed and not allowed. And art in itself runs a lot like that. And there's a lot of corruption in art these days. Most art students never make money. That should be relatively obvious to believe.
Most artists don't make money. Their estate after their death makes money.
Even that. I mean, kids who go to art university usually paid by their parents, and if they go to design, that's another thing. You can get actual jobs with that. But if you are, depending on which art form you went into, very unlikely you'll ever gonna make money with it. They have extra courses teaching them to have a concept of how much is your work actually worth, because especially in the beginning they undersell themselves so much they could never sustain themselves. So if you get around and someone hires you to make a children's book for the city about something, you're quite lucky, and these things cost a damn lot of money, like several tens of thousands of euros, because the process to make that is essentially every page is an art piece. That then comes with the writing, lettering, all of that, and you have to make a story out of the art pieces. That's a long process, and there's a lot of design and redrafting going into that in that case. And this is a project you have for several months, and it's not sure you're going to have another project that year. Then maybe you have your personal projects that you also want to finance, because you need to buy tools, you need to buy resources for all of that, and of course sustain yourself and pay rent. And that is why one art project that, for example, your city pays for, like some stupid children's book, that has maybe 12 pages, costs $50,000 and that's I'd say that's a very, very nice estimate. But let's say you just go with that. The artist who gets that is probably only going to have that one project the entire year, and the rest is looking for something. And that is an artist who's actually making money off of his craft. Most are not making any money off of their craft. And then you got the pieces where you have the art presentations of, here's this new fashionable artist that is the current fashion. Ooh. And it's the one person in the whole damn gallery that's wearing a hoodie, doesn't really want to interact with anyone. That can be a type. You also have the grandiose types, of course, no question about that. But everyone else is overdressed because it's the high society people. And the high society people go there to chat, to mingle, to look good to each other. and buy pieces of that artist because that artist is the current fashion, not because any of it is necessarily really good. That's how that artist makes money. And that is a piece of a percentile of art students. They end up in that vein, and maybe not forever, maybe just for a couple of years, because then the next guy is the hot stuff.
Okay.
But the real thing behind that is that most of these are mainly laundering money by buying this stuff. That's another story.
Okay.
Anyway, I tried off a lot, but art is a very interesting place.
Here's Kyle Rocket. 2 words, bloody roar. Oh dear, that's an old fighting game. I remember, but yes, there are many weird iterations of 2D fighters.
Is that the one where they had the Scottish guy whose like main super was lifting his kilt up and a fireball shot out of his crotch?
Yes,
What?
that's the one.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I can look at it. Yeah.
Who asked why? Who actually asked why?
The
just
Scottish.
then? Yeah, it's a fighting game. Doesn't need to answer quite. Doesn't matter. They can do what they want with the Scots.
Yeah.
I don't know what's on the
yeah, not really.
I always get that one and Killer Instinct sort of crossed. I don't know why, but they are different games. That's true. Anyway,
TJ combo's best.
they have combos. Yeah, they have those like 30 hit combos or whatever the hell they are. Yeah,
No,
okay.
TJ combo specifically. Best character in Killer Instinct.
All right, that's
If
fine.
anyone wants to fight me on that, go right ahead.
Oh no, we're good. We're good.
No, it's all right.
All right.
Regardless,
Can't fight
the
you,
question
Bez.
remains,
Plus is
do
racist.
video games have capacity? Well, many would argue nowadays that video games are just a cheap imitation of movies. That they're trying to cash in on a lot of the unique elements of film without actually making a film. And in many respects, they're correct. There's no doubt movies make big money, and the more game makers can make their games look similar to movies, the more people will get the impression that they're actually
That's an
playing,
entirely
which
different
is a very
subgenre of
attractive idea,
games.
seeing how people are attracted to
That's a
movies
different
already.
topic.
So, does that mean video games are just movies light? Are they just
No.
advanced versions of
No.
Dragon's Lair, where footage tells you where to go and if you don't follow, you just lose a turn? There's no denying that some, if not many games, are very much like that. So how can games be expected to evolve as an art form if it's just a watered-down version of another art form? Well,
Not.
games do have
It's
a
not.
very...
Completely different. Like games
know
are
what to
meant to
say.
be like active entertainment. Like
They're-
when you like a player like partakes in it. While like movies are entirely passive entertainment. Like you won't
and
much to do in
Yeah,
while you
it's-
watch a movie, other than like analyzing it in your head and like what you actually see and how you interpret it. If it comes to that.
and the video game
Games
can
are
go
not
completely
meant for that.
without
Like, some
cutscenes.
do have elements for that, but that's it.
And
yeah.
video games can go completely without cutscenes, as they did for decades, because simply due to limitations of hardware.
Also, just because some video games are tie-ins with a movie doesn't mean all video games are tie-ins with a movie.
Yeah. And
Y'all
know
remember
how
Street Fighter, the movie, the game?
Yeah,
we have a-
that was amazing.
Mhm.
Yeah, I honestly. Yeah.
I said it was amazing. Oh, thank you.
Whatever you say.
And then you look at games like Deus Ex, the first one, and aside
Yes.
from the intro,
Mm.
it's all in game. It's all in game. It's not there's no movie elements as far as I remember.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. When you look at a black helicopter to enter mission, oh my god, that's the second.
Yeah, it's an automated
Um,
sequence, but yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't lump that into that.
But yeah,
um,
Deus Ex is a good example.
Yeah, Vampire the Masquerade as well. There's no cutscenes as far as I remember.
No,
there
it's
are.
all in game.
It's all from your first person experience.
Yeah, but they're real time. There are cutscenes, but they're not rendered. They're not pre-rendered. They're real time cutscenes. So
You
Real time, things,
you
Like
could
Metal Gear
say
Solid 4.
yeah, exactly. Lots of games do it. BioWare does it all the time, so it's pretty standard stuff.
Yeah.
Well, Metal Gear Solid standardized it. More so.
Yeah, because that was like, oh, it's like a movie, and then it's like, oh, these
I would say
polygons.
Half-Life did it because like
And
they,
if you want to
even
bring
like
up
the second game.
Yeah.
The interactive.
That was like the thing that like
argument.
you like seeing the cutscenes yourself from your Gordon's perspective.
Yeah, but especially for this interactive movie thingy argument, that is exactly the point where you should bring in Asura's Wrath, and you're not. I'm saddened.
Yeah, but that's probably
there's no chance.
Why are you expecting the Nostalgia Critic to know things?
Yeah, there's no chance he'd ever pick that up on that. That's so niche.
Seemingly, he only talks about Nintendo titles, so like, there's no way.
Also, when did that video game come
out?
Before this video, I'm pretty sure.
I think 11.
Before this video.
Yeah.
I'll look it up. I keep forgetting.
Anyway, I'm just trying to make sure, because we could talk about, we could accidentally talk about games that came out after this video was made, which is...
Yeah, you're right. This is from... This video's from when? You said 5 years ago? Asura's Wrath is from 2012.
I'm also trying to remember what games were out at that point. I can talk about that one, yes.
All right, let's go.
Distinct from movies, music, paintings, and other forms of art. And that difference is choice. For the most part, you can't decide where a movie, a book, or a piece of music goes. It's finished when it's finished, and you observe it from there.
Pick your adventure,
but video games, by design, are dependent on different outcomes. And true, there are some pieces of art and literature where the choice of the observer plays a big...
Like, they're very linear. Most games have a very linear storyline. Like,
yeah,
even
like Bioshock Infinite.
Even RPGs, like the storyline. Goddamn it. Even in RPGs, like the only choice you have is how you progress in the story, how your character's play style.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah,
there's not much. Most games don't have the room for divergent storylines. That's
and most
a limitation thing, and the design
are not good. Mass Effect 3.
And the extra man hours that go into designing various paths, that's absolutely insane, especially when you have...
I was going to make a joke about the Mass Effect series as well, about choice, but you beat me to it.
Mass Effect, Dragon Age. Yeah, oh no.
Let's not get too much into those. I'd say more so Deus Ex than the other two.
I remembered another thing, or came to mind. Which is that the individual pieces that make a video game, I said before, those in itself are already forms of art and or design. Like we see in prop design, for example. I love the prop design in Ghost in the Shell, although I do not like the finished movie that came out of it. And on another, in video games, this is one of the most distinct other elements of video games is the music. And in many great Japanese games, the music itself can stand completely on its own. Nobuo Uematsu is a composer that is quite well known to people nowadays in the West, I believe. He's the main Final Fantasy Squaresoft composer. You also see him in other titles. Like it was when I first put in the disc to not Pandora's Tower, The Last Story. I just heard the first two keystrokes on the main screen. I thought, wait, I know this just from those two keystrokes. They had the feeling I associate with Nobuo Uematsu's pieces, and I thought, no, this can't be right because this is not a Final Fantasy game, so I didn't expect to hear his music. And I looked up on the box, Nobuo Uematsu. Okay, I can apparently identify. Maybe it was a lucky guess, but I can identify a composer by just two notes. That was a funny moment. And then you have other great artists in that area, and their work stands on its own. And the relevant part here is that, and this turns back into what we talked earlier about. This is just entertainment, la-di-da. The great operas that were and the symphonies that were written, they weren't just made to stand on their own. It was music made to accompany a stage play. That's what an opera more or less is, and that is to entertain people. Oh my. The people just didn't sit there all snobby and I am watching art and therefore I need to feel good and special. No, people came there to enjoy it and for escapism from their dreary lives, in which it was very hard to find any sort of media outside the annoying bard that was unable to tune his instrument, which is a bit more condescending than I wanted to be. But yeah, it's just you go to these places to find the more well-crafted things, and then you can have good street artists, and you can have rubble. That's even the case today. I've met many of the medieval folk bands I've later seen make quite good money, seen on festivals. They started as street musicians in Germany. And that even happens to this day. It's quite interesting. But yeah, main point I wanted to make is all the grand art in music, especially, that is now so well known. That was music accompanying other forms of media, of entertainment. You can make a stage play without any musical underlining, and you can make it with musical underlining, which you could argue, if you put a camera to that, you get a very basic movie. Simply by holding a camera aimed at the stage. Done. You got a movie. Wow. And then to not call the movie art because it's a recording would be just as disingenuous as calling buying the book of the stage play not art because it's a recording of what the characters say and what happens on the stage, or a recording of the music itself, and that would all be very disingenuous because then you pull all the pieces apart. You can have the individual pieces be art, you can have the amalgam of them be art, and video games are just another level, another type of that. It's taking the previous things we've had and puts another layer on that, which is interactiveness, on top of everything, every other art forms we've had before. It just puts them all together to the next level. The next iteration, which doesn't change that much in the sense of what art forms are put together, but will be the virtual reality variant, which is already happening. If there is then another iteration on entertainment that puts something else in that will be considered a new art form, entirely new art form, I can't imagine, because no one's come up with it yet, and I haven't come up with it yet, and I probably won't. And I think this is mainly the part, and because look at us, we're video game art snobs about 40-year-old games. It's 30 to 40-year-old pieces of art. Some were made before we were born. In the cases of some of us, I don't see how that is any different from film snobs or painting snobs, classical music snobs. If you want to hear classical music, listen to the Japanese composers. They are making essentially what would be considered classical music in the West. That's where that moved to.
I'll know it.
Yes, it changed. They have their own style and everything, but it is music accompanying other art forms. And they're they can be very complex, they can be very simplistic, there can be symphonies, and it's all there. I do not really see where that level of media production, of art production in music of that style, symphonic music, is happening in the West. Maybe I'm just blind to it. Maybe it's just Hollywood with the 3 most well-known guys, or 4. Danny Elfman, the other guys, I keep forgetting the names. Usually I can remember 3 or 4. Hans Zimmer.
Danny Elfman. Oh crap! I used to know.
Yeah, but that's the main stuff that's coming from over there.
Yeah, but like they have the criticism that their music is
John
rather repetitive.
If you listen to enough of Nobuo Uematsu's pieces, you tend to hear lots of the same things as well. And if you listen to a day of Sibelius, then you also notice that this starts to sound very similar, all of it. Because at some point, and I think Smut mentioned this a couple of streams ago, about in regards to John Campbell's Heroes of a Thousand Faces, especially in with the example of Neil Gaiman, that even Neil Gaiman noticed at some point, oh fuck, I am repeating myself. I am a sinner of the same problem that I see in other people, and I hoped I wouldn't commit. And in that regard, a friend of mine who was at this art university here, very good stuff. I never looked the interview up and whether it was a verbal or just a written down interview with Neil Gaiman. It was 10 years ago that he told me about this. Was that Neil Gaiman was aware of John Campbell's book, that it existed, but he was afraid to ever read it because he feared that after that he could never ever write a story again, because he would be paralyzed by having to acknowledge the fact that it's all the same all the time. Whether that went into what you told a couple of streams ago, I don't know, but I thought it was a nice anecdote.
What ended up happening with Gaiman was the fans of his work that really like his stuff saw the patterns he was following, and they would say like every fourth chapter there would be a scene at a bar, and the girlfriend would break up with the male lead.
Oh, I didn't know it was that extreme.
It was something very specific. Yeah, he was like, "Oh shit."
Shit, they figured it out.
Yeah, and he didn't realize that until they mentioned. It's like, "Oh, you're right." This is what I talked about. Killing Commendatore author. What the hell is his name? I have a bingo card for him. All of his books involve a black cat, a slice of life, cooking, some weird sexual exploits, all these like jazz music, all these things in all of his books, and he doesn't care. He just keeps doing it. That's what he likes. So in certain regards, it's fine, but if you're not aware of it, there's something wrong with you as a writer. Like there's like, what the hell? What are you doing?
I think I would have to correct myself. Another form where some new music comes out in the grand style, I think would be American musicals. Although I think I've heard there's a lot of reuse of the same pieces all over and over again. I only heard that because I'm not following the musical scene at all. It's not really my what I'm into. But that again would be music made to accompany, or in that case, more integrated into the medium created as a whole. And I would just like to see more music of that style coming from the West again, because I'm not seeing it. And I mean the classical stuff. I'm just not aware of it. Maybe it's just such underdog stuff that it completely eludes me. I don't know anything coming out of Europe at the time. And yeah, it's just the Japanese that I'm aware of are doing it, and that is the grand music that is accompanying another medium, just like lots of classical music did. And now the medium is not a stage play. Now the medium is a video game, and sometimes it's a direct adaptation of, like in Asuras Wrath again, Dvorak's Ninth Symphony, A New World, one of my absolute favorite pieces. So these things come together. I love the game. I love the music. Or it's just completely newly developed stuff. That is also very fun to play. If you've heard the piano versions of the soundtracks of Nier Automata, or of which the scorebooks are available, by the way, or of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, it is even fun to play. It's not that hard. The pieces are not too hard. They're not super beginner pieces, but they are fun to play.
All right.
And they sound great. And now
Okay.
I'm trailing off. Sorry.
Let's keep going. Mr. X, here's an interesting little bit of history if you guys don't know this. Plumbers Don't Wear Ties is an actual game, which predates MGS. Now, if you don't know those style of games, there's a whole genre called FMV. There's a full motion video where they actually just film people. And those are the cutscenes, the literal cutscenes they put into the game. I think the one that I remember most was the Phantasmagoria series, and the X-Files series, I believe, were full motion videos. So it's basically the same.
There was also that game on Sega CD. I can't remember the name.
Really? I played them on PC.
Night Trap.
Night Trap. That's it. Well, that's a classic.
Night Trap. Yes, that's the one.
That was a bit goofy, but
yeah, a bit goofy, and with how much of a ruckus it caused back then in the 90s, to the point where it got a re-release on the Switch. I'm not even kidding.
Yeah, even though I think someone said it will never be released on a Nintendo system.
Yeah, that definitely proved them wrong.
So even with examples with Gabriel Knight, FMV was a thing, and it was sort of like, oh, is this the next step of video gaming? We're just recording and making movies. We're making multiple choice movies now with branching paths. It's like it didn't really catch on. So
I'm just
yeah.
I just had to, my mind just had.
It was definitely a sign of things to come, but it was more of a phase more than anything.
I think so. Yeah.
Is that games like Rebel Assault 2 and Hardline?
Rebels, yeah, I love that game.
Say so, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So now I know what you're talking about. Okay.
Yeah.
You could say, I keep coming back to this. You could say Asura's Wrath is a modern iteration of that, in a way. It's not captured, it's rendered. It's all pre-rendered, of course. But the story on Rails type, where you have pieces of gameplay and interaction, is I think falls into that. Rather morphed into something else.
It really depends, because there's games where they take the entire experience, like X-Files and Phantasmagoria, where they take the stills of a room and that is the level. Whereas there's games like Wing Commander or Command
and Conquer was another one, I think.
Command and Conquer, the cutscenes are FMV, but the actual game is completely outside of that world.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah.
Oh, even Dune, the first Dune game I remember, that had all kinds of movies, cutscenes per level, which is followed the Command and
same
Conquer
company though.
With worms, the which of even God has never seen.
Right. So there's all kinds of technology used that is used and see if it's popular. Does it work? Can we keep making it? Will it sell? And they kind of go away. And that was the fall or the rise and fall of Sierra was a great example of the adventure game genre, which is still around. We still have adventure games, but nowhere near the style and amount that came out of Sierra. So genres come and crash, but then video games borrow everything that works and just keeps going with them. So it's kind of a cool format in that regard.
Yeah. Isn't that also a part of art in a way that, I found this new or developed this new tool, let's see what I can do with that, whether that's a chisel or brush or some new material for canvas. Like,
it depends.
I can paint with oil on metal.
Right. The thing is we're talking about stuff in Sierra, like there were no tools. Like the only tools we have in terms of the 90s and onward was stuff for DirectX and the OpenGL library and iterations thereof. When we got 3DFX, then we had DirectX 3. Then the jump was to 5. 5 was the actual library number that was was usable across the board. People could understand it. It wasn't this magical assembly language you had to go into. So there was a standard that people used. You could use the Microsoft .NET platform, the IDE, to properly code stuff. And then late, was it 2000s? No. Early 2000s, middle 2000s, we had kits that you could port to different platforms easier. Then we had a Unity, which was kind of the selling point of Unity when it came out, was that you could put it to a website, you could put it to mobile, You could put it to Nintendo or whatever. So it had these wonderful cross-platform publishing options. So it was making tools easier to get into. The math was easier to use as understanding trigonometry. So it wasn't just like, I'm going to I have to write a physics engine from scratch. So you have to like get Tokamak or something or figure out how to do that. So yeah, now we have DirectX, 12? So all the tools are there. 12. I think it's around there. After 7 or 8, it's useless.
I wouldn't say. I'd go deeper with tools. That's not just how do I? I have a new brush. It's also how do I hold the brush? What can I do with it? How can I call completely different sounds out of a guitar by holding it differently? So there's a bit of the general natural hacking culture in it.
But like, nowadays,
when dithering was developed by LucasArts for the Monkey Island game, and you got a whole little technology tool out of that for making graphics that seemed completely impossible before, and then died out by the late 90s because graphics advanced in general, and it wasn't needed for a while.
So nowadays, there's really no extra tools. Like there's no special tools. It's all just shaders and new iterations of hardware that could support those software shaders. So that's why we look at PS4 and PS5. I think the video for the Final Fantasy VII remake for PS5, where they're going to have whatever DLC coming out with Yuffie and all that other crap, they did the comparison, and all it is just shaders. Everything else is just the same. So that's all we're talking about when we go into software and iterations of emulators for OpenGL or DirectX, whatever you're using. That's all it is. The newest thing was ray tracing, which is awesome, but we had ray tracing back in the 2000s, but there was no way our hardware could support it.
The N64 in its advertisement VHS tapes that they had in the stores advertised also about not ray tracing, some other things, but that they couldn't actually employ. I think anti-aliasing.
No.
Because you don't really need that because you have it on the CRT anyway.
Well, it depends. It really depends on the technique they're using. Anyway, there's all these technical things, and there's so much more I've forgotten. I don't even know because they've invented new stuff. But it all has to do with light and shadow, and rendering meshes and rendering the textures on the meshes. That's the majority of the software support. So, no new tools to my knowledge.
If ever I get to the attic of my parents' house and that video still exists because I have it, and it didn't disintegrate because VHSs tend to do that after a while, just like CDs. I can look that up if it's not on YouTube. That would be maybe that's interesting, but not now.
All right, here is Joe Crazy. Star Wars Dark Forces had those live action bits in it. Really? I don't remember that. How long ago was that?
Dark Force, yes, they did. Katan, like everyone else, was just played by an actual actor. But the CG was kind of terrible, but yeah. It was like cheap Lucasfilm, pretty much.
Okay. Oh, geez, I just did a search for Dark Forces FMV. It's like, oh, boy. That is fun. See, during that time, I was playing X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, so...
that's another classic.
Yeah. Anyway.
Rogue Squadron.
Video games, that's not just a small part of the process, it's the majority of the focus. Because of this, we create a medium where not only are they allowed to experiment with choice, but they're actually expected to. And when you're expected to produce more possibilities, you're expected to experiment more, take risks more, and generally find out how many outcomes can be created. Sure, most of them are very simple, as in avoid getting hit by something or you'll die. But how about the games that create new worlds to explore, new stories to create? And not just from the creator anymore, but from the observer. Few would disagree that much of art is about the creation, and this is one of the rare mediums that allows the viewer to make just as much great art as the artist who created it does. It isn't just the graphics and the technology that's evolving, it's the unique interaction between the player and the game. And yes, there are games that try to serve as nothing but mindless entertainment, and there are games that try to be complex and interesting but instead come out as predictable and boring. But how is that any different from bad art or bad movies? They're all trying to tap into something that makes you understand and celebrate the human condition. Even something like Transformers. Yeah, I know, easy target, but something as simple as Transformers is trying to get across what we value as good human ethics, right down to the very basic good versus evil. Now, does that make it something that's going to be relevant and studied years later? Probably not. But at the same time, you don't call an entire artistic medium a failure because some bad art is popular.
Part of the movie. Moving on.
Now, if the question is, have video games reached that level of high art?
The music
that's
is
a little
too
bit
loud.
more debatable. As a casual gamer, I
mean,
don't know if I've seen that
bland...
Boobs. That's always good. Anyway.
Tits are great.
I think the music's too loud. I can barely understand him.
Well, yeah.
That's a good thing.
Food Alice is just way too much for
Beethoven, god damn it, why are you so loud here?
Beethoven knew, like, someday there will be a bald wanker on YouTube. So I must play this music as loud
I will
as
make
possible.
my music
Beethoven
so loud.
is loud because he's deaf.
Yeah,
Make my music
exactly.
loud and you will like it.
Yeah, no, it's not just that he's deaf, it's that he knew. He's trying to help us.
he's writing this for his woman, and he's like, I will play as loud as I want. Shut up. I'm writing it for you. You're going to like it. Like, okay.
What do you say?
Turns out
I can't hear you.
Turns out the woman is just a nostalgia critic in a dress.
Oh, please no, Bears.
Anytime you play Beethoven, therefore you're talking about something serious. Like, okay.
Uh-huh. Oh, it's like when they say, "Oh, you got to play Beethoven for your kids." It's like, no, it's perfectly fine. I'll just play.
I'm playing Wasp for my kids. Fuck that.
Rammstein. I think.
Fucking like when a girl gets pregnant, it's gonna put "fuck like a beast" on her stomach. Like, yeah, kid, you're gonna learn today.
No.
Like, this is how you were made, boy. You hear that shit?
That's the equivalent of the 7th Seal or 2001. But I would make the argument that some have come close.
No, not
This may
Bioshock
sound strange, but something like The Sims, as much
The
as I personally
Sims?
like playing it,
What are you
toys with the idea.
All right, so he's mixing genres or multiple games of different genres because Bioshock Infinite is a first-person shooter linear story, and The Sims is literally a simulation. Lots of moving parts.
It is linear. You create a sim and then you play it for so long you switch your game off because there's nothing else to do.
there are a series of quests and side quests very similar to an RPGs. You have quests and side quests as well, but a simulation is a little different than a first-person shooter.
Yeah.
So nowadays,
one is something very active. The other one's an ant farm.
Yeah, to make woohoo 8 times a day or something to get simoleons is a lot different to rescue Elizabeth from Colombia. I will admit that, yeah. Slight differences.
So, yeah, trying to compare the artistic elements of The Sims to, like, I don't know, movies, like, not quite the same thing. Lots of effort was put into both. But
it would have been better if he'd said the artistic qualities of, say, Bioshock Infinite compared to a movie. But that would probably be like a better...
I think because of the storytelling elements in Bioshock Infinite are more stimulating as a story than The Sims would ever be. Because The Sims is just, I have a virtual dude, he has to go do these 5 things and not wet himself in the process.
It's like it really does actually boil down to that. But it's like oh yeah, the intrinsic story of FIFA 15. What? No, it's just a football game. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, there's elements of toys in video games. Like a toy is just a ball. You can play with the ball.
Yeah.
You can play with the ball in The Sims. You can play with the ball in an actual soccer game. So there is toy aspects as well as story aspects and all these other elements which make interactive fiction so compelling.
Hey, you hear me?
Toys within toys.
Hey.
Hello.
Yeah, I was just on my way out, but before I go, I was able to, just now on Steam, they had a deal. I got all the DSS games for $10. So if anybody likes Deus Ex, you can get the whole series for $10. You have to manually. You have to manually. No, never mind. I'm thinking of Tomb Raider. No, you get everything for $10. All right, I'll see you guys later.
Wow. Okay. $10 for the entire Mass Effect series. Incredible.
Especially for Invisible War. That's the best one.
Oh, wow.
No, the first is the best.
I'm a true connoisseur of
Isn't there an iPad game, Deus Ex?
Yeah, there is. I think it's called...
Juice
I
X,
remember very
Crush.
vividly Total Biscuit ranting about that one, especially. That was fun.
Yeah.
I think it gave him nausea.
They eventually released that shit on PC, and I don't know why. Like, because it's pretty much a dumbed-down version of Human Revolution that has horrendous controls.
All right, okay.
Of living your life in a world almost identical to ours. But once again, the choices you make in the environment, I think, can say much about how people live their lives in the real world and in their fantasy world. Just the experience in what you do and how you play, and how it contrasts to how you react in the real world. That's a very different and interesting form of artistic expression, whether you realize you're doing it or not. And again, the genuine art comes from the user, not necessarily the creator. I think the same can be said for games like Skyrim or World of Warcraft or any of these.
I don't know if playing a game is artistic.
I'm sorry, I completely
not inherently. No,
my brain just locks onto the music and it's echoing in my head because it's good, and then his voice turns into some background blabber, and I don't know what he's saying.
So he's trying to say that the playing of a game is more artistic than the creation of the game, which I don't even know.
What? No, not from that perspective. No.
He must be talking about sandbox or sim games where you can make whatever you want from the stuff they give you, the prefab units of whatever. So.
On that point, kinda.
Yeah, that's the art of having Lego pieces.
Kind of, yeah.
And using them.
And not stepping on them.
It's essentially, again, a toy.
Hey,
it is a different kind of toy which you can manipulate.
Yeah.
That's it. That's not artistic, though.
Not on its own, no.
Games where you're allowed not to just go on adventures, but live a life any way you want to live it, in a completely different reality. I think you could also make the argument that games like Bioshock Infinite, though not allowing as much choice as other games, create some very powerful commentary while also being a visual marvel. But like I said, as a casual gamer, I can't act like I'm the biggest expert.
Yeah, it wasn't good. Yeah, the Infinite wasn't a good enough example.
I just haven't seen it yet. Maybe it just hasn't gotten the public attention that it deserves. Or maybe the big game changer is one of these games, and the reveal of time will slowly show that. But what I do know is the possibilities are there, and they're being experimented with day after day as the medium continues to grow. It reminds me of when people used to say that comic books weren't high art, and that they were nothing but childish nonsense. I'll admit, I used to kind of be on that boat too. But then groundbreaking works like Mouse came out, and Watchmen, and Persepolis, and a lot of other great works that said, hey, we don't care what you think. We're going to prove
we got a new Warriors.
There is a medium here that can be as powerful, thoughtful, provoking, and emotionally stimulating.
I mean, to be fair, that got canceled, didn't it?
Yes, I know.
It was cancelled.
Okay, so thankfully,
officially not,
okay,
but like it was.
Okay, so before moving on with the video again, it's like at least common sense kicked in when it did.
Yeah, with
New Warriors
with that one.
So New Warriors got cancelled.
I believe it did. Yeah.
It did.
Wait, when did it get made?
It didn't get made in the end.
Oh right.
Yeah, it never got made.
Oh my god, that's amazing. That makes me feel a lot better with the world.
Yeah,
they
dropped it whoever releasing it.
It restores at least a little. It restores a little hope in humanity yet.
If it had actually been released, we would have seen the usual channels cover it.
One at a
would
time.
have probably been the only ones who bought it in the first place.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's actually good. I'm glad it didn't get released. I'm really
we get a lot of similar shit.
I want to bully
anyway.
Daniel Kibblesmith one of these days.
Yeah.
Just go to the was it the Marvel YouTube channel, and it's the new Warriors trailer. Just enjoy the ratio and the comments, and
Is it still there?
I was already there ages ago.
It's not the same if I don't give him an atomic wedgie and then stuff him in a locker. It has that personal touch to it. When it's in
the main reason was
95% dislike ratio.
Yeah, to be honest with you, with that one, I'll be honest here. I have no interest in Marvel comics. I prefer DC anyway.
Yeah, boy.
But it was when I saw it all. It was the arrogance and the snottiness and pure. It was really hatred towards just normal Marvel fans that I felt was oozing from these people while making the New Warriors, as in like we hate you. We just really just want to destroy what you enjoyed. So hearing that it never even got off the ground and it just got cancelled, it makes me feel better because at least bad things happen to bad people, and it just helps, Well, that's just my view of it. If people think differently.
Watch the trailer for Children of the Atom because goddamn. Like one of the fucking like the personality traits of these characters, like, oh, this one's got a fitness Instagram.
That's not a personality trait. That's not a personality trait.
I know that, Hawk. I know that's not a personality trait.
That's a hobby.
Yeah. It's not even an interesting hobby.
Yeah. This is, by the way, I know this is very off topic now, but this is what I keep trying to explain to people about when the socialists redefined all this gender stuff. They define everything that is a personality trait, an interest, and a hobby as a gender now. So conflating all these things in that comic makes sense from their point of view because it's all the same. It's all the same to them. They don't make distinctions between these things. Yeah, in reality it isn't. But from their point of view, it's all the same.
Yeah. Completely broken point of view, let's be honest.
My personality trait is I can't even think like that. Fucking hell.
All right.
Flip coin.
Let's move on.
Yeah, we'll move on. Yeah.
Of art. And sure enough, the medium is much more respected now than it was before. An argument has even risen that comic book heroes are the new Greek myths, being written from so many different points of view, but still being the center of value that popular culture looks up to.
No.
The reimagining of video game characters with their legends.
In regards to them being, highly regarded in terms of the current culture, I guess, but not anything beyond that, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's the same argument with Transformers. It's popular, doesn't mean it's good.
Yeah. Good. Yeah.
Marvel. No, in the case of Marvel specifically, it's good for the most part.
That's like saying
but you are right. But you're still right.
That's like saying McDonald's is good, but it's not like some fantastic meal. It's still good.
No, McDonald's is terrible. What are you talking about?
McDonald's must be the perfect cuisine. Like.
Yeah, these are several topics at the same time right now. Personally, I kind of like the argument of current day superheroes being similar, whether that's comic books or video games, similar to the Greek myths. However, or mythology and legends in general, because many have faded out. Like many German old legends have faded out because nobody talks about them. They're not used in media. But I can imagine that the stories of Hercules weren't just instantly there. It wasn't instantly written. This is the thing. These are the 12 trials,
12 labors.
The 12 labors and how he did them. I can rather imagine that they evolved over time, and what we've got is either a snapshot from that process or the final product of all of these stories throughout their development, just like all the other stories about the gods, similar to the stories about the Egyptian pantheon. So what iteration of Superman and Batman will or may persist throughout time once our civilization is gone and hopefully replaced at some point by another one with the cool liberties we have right now, and they discover
a better one with common sense.
Yeah, hopefully. But But when our stuff is faded, they have their own pop culture things and video and entertainment heroes. Because lots of these stories were told, people told each other for entertainment. If you look at the Egyptian myths, it's a lot about tricking each other. That's why the Loki stories also are very very famous, because they're fun. It's about tricking. It's about tricking people. The tricks stories are fun. The whole Set versus Horus stories are fun, and Osiris. They in the Egyptian thing, they often end up in dominating the other by ass fucking, depending on who won. And that's probably not the stories they told the children, but it's likely the stories they told each other around the fire when drinking beer. Because that's their entertainment. And I wonder if a future iteration of human civilization looks at our time and finds our cultural products, which stories they will take from that they will use as, oh, this is the high form of Superman, Batman, Link. Maybe they'll rediscover the Nibelungen saga, things like that. Maybe, who knows? But I wouldn't say it's not these things, because a lot of it is media and entertainment, not just how do we teach our children morals? Yeah, by these mythological stories about the gods. Yeah, what are the video games doing? And as sad as it sounds, I got a lot from Nintendo games in my childhood, because certainly the teachers weren't doing it. And so get out and seek adventure, try out things, stand up for the right things, stand up for truth, all of these little things, the basics. They are in the Nintendo games. I think that that's a good thing, and they're conveyed by these cultural heroes. Whether that's so whether you have your mythology or religion that teaches you that, or these things, the differences are minor, I think.
Mark,
I think it's more about that.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Yeah, it's less about blind belief and faith. It's more about and entertaining and conveying messages.
Mark, why are you Captain Kirk? Get out of the ribbon, Mark.
I'm having fun here.
Mark, help me beat up Malcolm McDowell, please. Mark.
All right. On that note, from that long speech, let's move on.
Fight him.
Come on,
Mark. I'm gonna bury you. I'm gonna bury you on Mark's grave under a pile of rocks on some random ass planet. That'll be
all right. Let's move on.
Deal with that.
Come on. All right.
So, in answer to are video games art or high art, I will make the argument that if people don't see that the answer is yes, they will. If a game doesn't exist that'll sway you over, the possibilities that continue to evolve with technology inevitably have to. And yes, many great people I admire, like Roger Ebert, declared they never have been and never will be art.
Roger Ebert is the person who gave Phantom Menace a 4 out of 5 review. I
enjoyed Phantom Menace. Enjoyed the Phantom Menace and disparaged Mask of the Phantasm.
Yes, that was hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that should tell you how much of a backwards opinion Roger Ebert had with a couple things.
Well, at least he liked Grave of the Fireflies.
He has seen it?
Yeah, on the collector's edition thingy for Grave of the Fireflies, there's a second a disc on it with background stuff, including an analysis by Roger Ebert and the other guy, and it's pretty good because he also goes into explaining basic cinema tools or film tools that the Asians use, that Japan is using, that is almost never employed in the West, either ever, or I don't know if it ever was employed. that is, for example, the most prominent of these techniques that are that make a very big distinction between the West and Japan is or Asian cinema and animation. And the best Western example is Michael Bay, who uses none of that at all, not even a quantum of it. And the Japanese do is visual punctuation. Like you have a scene play out. It can be an action scene. It can be a drama scene. You have it can be some other dialogue, and slice of life is a lot of this. But then you have a landscape shot, or just a shot of a single item in the kitchen, and there's no more dialogue. It's just this quiet picture. You have the background sounds, the atmosphere, maybe the birds or cicada sounds, and that gives you a pause. It's like the paragraph is over. Here's the period, and now the paragraph is over, and now the next chapter begins without headlines, without chapter numbers. It's just, okay, I give you a moment to let what just happened, the scene, the action, the drama, the philosophical dilemma sink in, and then we move on to the next thing. And they usually do this with landscape shots, city shots, very quiet scenes. And Michael Bay is the absolute example of rushing from explosion to explosion without pause, so monotonous that you do not even are able to catch a breath and not care about neither the action nor what anyone says. Of course, you might just notice how inconsistent the movie is while you're seeing it. It's just overwhelming you. And the Japanese, they give you time to process. Then explains things like that in that little thing. It's quite nice.
Here is Mike Testa. Well, Roger's dead and can't hurt games anymore, Doug. Well, I don't think anyone took Roger seriously that appreciates games. Certainly not the industry, because the industry was growing at that point. Now it's the biggest billion-dollar entertainment industry ever. So,
and to be honest,
without any exaggeration,
even the film industry start to not take him seriously after a while.
Yeah, we don't care how other people think of it or categorize it. It's still going to sell. People are still going to have a favorite pastime, and that is playing with their friends or others online or without their friends and playing a single-player game. And it's like reading a book. It's like playing a sport. It's all of these things in one. It appeals to many people. And whether we have to invent some new word to describe this category of art is fine. It doesn't make any difference. So
yeah. And the German government was so keen on getting any video game developer out of Germany because they were completely engulfed in this belief that, video games are bad because they turn kids into school shooters. So they really made it very uncomfortable for any game developers in Germany. Many left. Crytek is one of them. Crysis Games. It's originally from here. And and now they're looking at this giant industry, and we're not getting much out of it. Oh, yeah, sucks to be you, German politicians, you fuckers.
Yeah, it's their own damn fault. Plain simple.
Hey, Mark, what was it like fighting the Gorn on Cestus 3?
It was amazing. I did my karate chop. He didn't see that one coming.
All right, let's keep going. We're almost done.
And while I respectfully disagree, I don't see him or anyone who thinks similar any less intelligent or influential. I simply ask that people who think it cannot evolve at the very least keep their minds open to the roads that can be traveled with the medium. That if you think video games are not high art now, be aware that they certainly have the ability to be so in the future. Many evolving art...
All he's saying is people are dumb, but later on they won't be dumb. They'll think differently. It's like, that's not... I don't know. Someone who's always obviously evaluating Picasso and all these other great painters. Look at a video game and going, I'm not interested in that. That's fine. But it's still art. Whether you think a Picasso can't work in a video game studio is your business, but there are plenty of talented people out there working all throughout the industry. And
Picasso's work has been incorporated in some video games as Easter eggs in background images.
Oh yeah, but that's
that's true.
Those are like cosmetic things. I'm talking about actual brilliant designers that have a philosophy. Like when we talk about Shigeru Miyamoto, I don't think he's that amazing an artist, but his vision and his idea for a premise of a video game is like, I want to have radishes. And I'm like, what? Why do you? I'm tilling my soil in my garden. It's like, that's stupid. Like, what are you talking about? Then he actually.
I mean, not to say Miyamoto hasn't gone cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs from time to time, but a lot of his work has been pretty ingenious.
Right. Yeah, so Pikmin came out, and you're like, what the hell is this? And then it's actually pretty fun. Now it's pretty fun, and then that's it. There's not much to it. So there could have been more iterations. There could have been more design, more depth. But he doesn't think in terms of like what's it going to be in like 10 years? Like, no, is this fun? Let's make it. And that's that. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't work out, no problem. We'll make something else.
Okay, let's entertain a kid for a couple hours, because the target audience of Miyamoto is not the 20-year-olds or 30-year-olds. And
they are certainly leaning more. They are certainly leaning more towards that demographic, but but you're right. It is still not.
Yeah, but it doesn't stay simple and easy as I would expect from Western developers who would be looking down on children, as we see in the social justice crowd. When they make stuff for kids, it's completely condescending and depriving children of any sort of intelligence. While at the same time, they claim that children can consent to whatever, like hormone therapy or something like that, or worse things. And so which is completely contradictory. But back to games. Miyamoto has a talent for translating these things that he likes from his childhood into a very, I don't want to say simplistic, but simplified, distilled form of how do I translate this into a game mechanic, and then not overcrowd the game with these things, spread them out in a balanced fashion that is always fun. And that is his absolute talent, and that is I think is beautiful and wonderful. And then you have to keep in mind that when you try to design a game, just like when you learn to draw or any other art form, that where you create something yourself, not just playing learning a musical piece, but actually trying to write one. Mm-hmm. Almost everything you make will be shit. Pareto principle applies there as well. I bet Miyamoto has for every game he made, he probably has 100 to 1,000 game ideas that never made it out of the drawer again.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't say they're that numerous, but when I was in video game school, we were coming up with concepts, and every concept sounds really cool. Like oh, I never thought of something like that. And then you sort of like, how does that ever going to work? Like, how can you possibly? Because you have to think about it mathematically. How do you create a guy standing on a ball or something? Like,
yeah, you have to also consider the long term of the concept in regards to the gaming medium.
That's why
that's the key with it.
That's why when we look at designing a game, everything became a third-person shooter. Everything is like, oh, I can see my character. We have a cover component. We've got doors opening. You can jump. It's like, oh, I want a character that can run around and shoot and do stuff. Like, yeah, that's what I like.
Yeah, because that eventually became so short, sweet, and to the point that it's like it was such a stigma that they really didn't want to get detached from in regards to that.
Right. The same with everyone has a great idea for an MMO. Like everyone can have their own MMORPG. It's great idea. It'd be amazing. It's like
it's mainly a lot of functionality that is oftentimes too complicated to integrate, to develop. You have to focus on a couple that you really flesh out and that you bring into balance and make work. Because if you Mark Kern talks about this sometimes when he's in interviews about all the dream stuff they had gathered on this would be cool to have in the game, and it sounds amazing, and maybe 1% of that ever made it into it,
right?
Due to resource constraints simply.
There's all kinds of stuff that was 20 years old that never existed and exists now, and you were thinking, oh, we could totally put that in an MMO. And you're like, but why? Like, that's not fun. That's just a thing that you wanted.
Yeah. To go back to another example, it's like, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and that's why I think, although it's not the perfect approach, but I think it's one of the best approaches for making games. That is Miyamoto's. Is fun is everything. Yes, there are some more aspects to it, but gameplay, fun, is the game fun?
And that's why I'm glad they didn't give Super Mario too much story or voice acting or dialogue.
There are definitely people out there that would want those games to have more of that. But the core aspect of the gameplay, driving everything else, is what has made Nintendo successful up to today.
Yeah, and that is the same reason why the Zelda series functions so well. You play the old titles, but I'd say Link's Awakening is the best example of that. You have this top-down adventure game, and there is dialogue in dialogue. The NPCs talk with Link. And you have the mute protagonist whom you can project yourself onto that way, that way the kid, because Zelda is for a little bit older kids than Mario, because you need to read a little bit. Still is simplistic in its game functionality, in its gameplay, but complex enough to not be boring. In Mario, that's mainly the levels. In Zelda, it's the tools you have at your disposal interacting with the environment, and that is where the fun in that comes from. That's how the adventure comes to be. I forgot the initial point I wanted to make. It's the gameplay. Get the gameplay right.
Van Gogh third-person shooter.
Everyone wants to make
that might be. Dude, what is Okami? It's not a first-person shooter, yes, but what is Okami?
Some kind of Japanese thing. I don't know. I'm not Japanese.
Yeah, but it's
shit, right, huh?
I just want Genesis. God damn it.
Also, Mark, why'd you put that?
It's an adventure game. So Smart, your team would never have made Okami because it's not a shooter.
I know we ended up making a clone of Smash Bros. So
nice.
Yeah, we called it Animal Cruelty. We had a bunch of animals and we beat the shit out of each other.
Yeah,
sweet. So you made Pokemon then?
We had weird animals. Yeah.
Isn't there a Pokemon Tekken game that is Pokemon but with Tekken mechanics? Or Tekken with Pokemon?
No, more like Super Smash Brothers. More like that.
Street Fighter?
Yeah, I just meant there's an actual game that is Tekken but it's all Pokemon.
Mortal Kombat?
Boy. I forgot the name.
Shit! Fucking fatalities of Pokemon.
Yeah.
I forgot the name, and I always thought about, am I going to buy this? But it never got reduced in price, so I didn't. It was a Wii U game, I think. Anyway, Okami. Okami is visually a game that tries to resemble. In German we call it Seidenmalerei. The Japanese art style you find on what they paint on their paper walls and their silk clothing. This very, very artistic. What's the word I'm looking for? Not gay. Fuck you. Abstracted style. So it's not the term abstract art is very, very misunderstood. In German, you would have to distinct between abstrakter Kunst, but it should be abstrahiert, which means it's broken down to its basic forms and shapes. It's not realistic, but you get the idea of it. It's basically something that Picasso delved into, because you could still see what he was doing, what was on the picture, but it didn't look anything like the real thing. And he of course went to quite extremes. But that is basically what Okami is. Okami is what you find in traditional Japanese art, and that's made into an interactive game.
Hey Wisp, the chat figured it out. It's called Pokken.
Oh god, I just made I tried to make up the name in my mind, and I didn't want to say it, but it's actually Pokken. Oh my god. I always thought, what am I going to buy this? But it never got under $50, so I didn't buy it. Man, Pokken.
Okay, we're almost done.
So back to the Vincent Van Gogh fighting game.
Don't they have that crazy like famous people of yesteryear all fighting each other, like Tesla and Einstein and whoever?
Yeah, I think it was like supposed to be some kind of weird like crowdfunded scientist fighting game kind of thing.
It sounds like some Steam Greenlight game for $1.
Someone link that in the Discord, please. And you can do this with different art styles. Like there was a for the N64 Clay Fighters 63 1/3.
Oh, Clay Fighters is badass. I love that one.
Oh yeah, and that was all claymation, the animations, all of them, not just like in Mortal Kombat 1 where Goro was the what's that his name? Was a claymation figure, but in Clay Fighters everything was. It was kind of cool. You can probably do that with a Van Gogh style.
It's called Science Combat. There we go.
Yeah. So you can probably do that with Picasso or Van Gogh style.
Isaac Newton versus Pythagoras, Stephen Hawking, and Alan Turing. What the hell?
I just want the fatality where Van Gogh rips his right ear off and chokes someone to death with it.
Yes.
Pythagoras just makes circles out of everyone, probably.
I want that, but I also want Van Gogh to go, I can't hear you! Doing it.
Oh, while he's doing the Hulk Hogan pose with fucking blood leaking out of his head, yeah.
Ooh, there's a desktop version. Oh my god.
Oh shit. Smud Night Gaming. Fuck yeah.
No.
Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy. Let's do it.
Sounds good.
Smud Night Gaming.
Yeah, boy. Let's do it. Fuck yeah.
All right. Let's keep going here.
And mediums have been shunned in the past, and much of their progress came from not what they weren't, but what they could be. And it's hard to see how the evolution of this to this is any different from the evolution of this to this. Yes, there will always be mindless games for escapism in the same way there will always be mindless movies for escapism. But if that is the full extent of the possibilities you can see in video games, I humbly challenge you to stop, start over, and play again.
Stop, collaborate.
I'm the Nostalgia Critic guy, remember it so you don't have to.
All right.
And speaking of mindless escapes...
Nope.
No, please
yeah,
no.
you burned it.
Nope.
Oh, no. We're good.
No. That's not an urn. That's
not necessary.
No.
We're okay.
All right.
I'd rather have Mark put it
I wish to live for a little bit longer.
All right. So that was not bad. I mean, he didn't really say much complicated or controversial things, so it was relatively good to go through.
He literally boiled it down to if you don't think it's art, just look at it again. It's like, okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, change your mind. It's not art. Change your mind. It's like, what? No.
Well,
like his examples were like too general, I would say. That's what I could say.
Then again, he's got no real knowledge.
Yeah, he admitted that he's very casual with video games, so it's like, okay.
Yeah, I thought that surprisingly humble of him.
So
Didn't expect that.
we can do a lot of things in terms of what makes a good video game, and we can talk about mechanics of a certain genre, because that's what it comes down to when you talk about gameplay, or we can talk about the story and the rendering of the story in everything, any genre, and that's usually what we talk about when we talk about art in video games as an experience. Like you can look at like Okami or what were all those crazy ethereal games where it's adventure, but it's just this long big world where it's all visuals and gameplay, whereas opposed to things like Metal Gear Solid 3, it's all about story, and the gameplay is good, but that's just a part of it. It's a one part of the puzzle. So we can look at games from the Super Nintendo era, what influenced us there, the PlayStation era from 1 to 5, well, I guess 5, yeah. I haven't touched 5 yet, but like the ones that we know are, for me at least, were the story ones, not necessarily the gaming ones, just because that's where the consoles were doing more jobs there in the story than they were in the PC world. Like, unless you're talking about Sierra games, because Sierra games did have focus on story because they're adventure games, you have to. So I would say the one that influenced me most was probably Chrono Trigger. That was the one where emotionally, not intellectually, not, it wasn't some complicated idea, but the ideas in Chrono Trigger, I was like, hey, that's kind of cool. It's a castle in the sky, but that's their own version of a castle in the sky. And they have like an evil castle in the sky, or they have a way to change things and a way to make your time machine a flying time machine. All these little ideas that combined, I wouldn't even say they were inspired by Akira Toriyama, because his was just an art style. I think there was something else going on in the Dream Team that were making that game, where they were all collaborating and making cool ideas. And
it reminds me a lot of translating and evolving some of without using the same world, but evolving elements and ideas they had from the Mana game. Because you see a lot of that translated there.
Well, we do know the inspiration came from the team that helped make Secret of Mana and the series of Secret of Mana. And then that was from Chrono Trigger, came into the world of Xenogears, as well as, of course, the Xenosaga. And what came after that? Oh, I'm trying to remember all the other stuff that was inspired by that. Vagrant Story?
I am absolutely baffled that Secret of Mana led into Xenosaga. That is...
Well, the same team, not exactly, but...
Yeah, I know, but that you have the development process of ideas within that team.
Right. So this is the same concept I take when I look at Planescape Torment. People say this is the greatest PC game of all time, yada yada. It's like, no, it's not that great. But
no, it's not. It's. I'd say it's the best writing, one of the best written games, because that is just astonishing. Planescape Torment, personally, sorry, I'm talking over you here. Personally, I think is an absolute exception to the rule of gameplay is everything. Because the gameplay in Planescape Torment is pretty mediocre, if not even subpar, for one of these AD&D games. And but the writing is, because usually bad gameplay can break a game so much that it doesn't matter how good the writing is.
Well,
Planescape Torment has so good writing that the gameplay is irrelevant, I think.
Yeah, this is the Chris Avellone approach. The same way we look at The Last Jedi. It's like, I'm going to subvert everyone's idea of what a Star Wars movie is. Whereas Chris Avellone says, I'm going to subvert your idea of what a D&D campaign is. And he takes, okay, no swords. You can't equip one. Your arm could be used as a weapon. You can't change classes. Or actually, could you change? I can't remember.
You could change.
Yeah, there's 3 classes, right. So he was trying to do as many things on their head. Like the succubus was not the sexy seductress. She was the conservative intellectual. So a lot of things that we think...
She was a virgin.
Yeah, so the concept of personifying a character within a world, like the Nameless One, all because of a gameplay mechanic of death and coming back from death, which is what we do in video games anyway. We die, we try again, we reload or whatever. So taking that and making an entire backstory around that, throwing it into a D&D world with a D&D setting, and specifically the, what was it called? There's a specific world for it, though. I don't remember the name. But he chose these elements specifically and worked with that. The same way they tried to do with the second iteration of Planescape Torment, which was the Kickstarter, which did not pan out too well. So,
was that Pillars of Eternity?
No. That was Obsidian, but that was their own version of a D&D. I didn't get around.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I was talking about the actual Tides of Numenera.
Yeah,
which
I only
sounded
remember
great.
that as a role-playing game book manual.
They based it off some flavor of D&D. I don't remember, called the Ninth World or something like that, or the Ninth Age of Man, and it sounds great. Everything about it sounds fantastic on paper. I'm sure it's a great campaign if you're playing with your friends, but story-wise, you ended up playing the setting as opposed to playing the character, which I did not appreciate. So you can't always take something great and go, I'm going to, unless you understand, because the guy who was in charge of the second project was on the first project, but he wasn't the main guy, he wasn't the main lead or the lead writer. So it's the same concept with Chrono Trigger. You had all these excellent artists come together, and they all worked and everything connected. Artists, animators, Yasunori Mitsuda, the musician, like everything was just beautifully connected. And it was what was it, 15-hour experience, Chrono Trigger? I can't remember. So when you see the iteration, the next version of Chrono Trigger, I think it was called Chrono Cross.
Yep.
Lots of crazy ideas. Turn-based combat, fully 3D.
Beautiful soundtrack.
Beautiful. Oh, yeah. There's like 40, 45 characters. There's so many characters. You're like, oh, my God, they're Pokemon at this point. And it just gets watered down. And not to say the story was bad. The execution of the story was bad. Something did not connect the same way. There was obviously some emotional things there that you can appreciate if you played the first game, but something was missing. So there's lots of beautiful stuff as a piece of art, and you can appreciate the music and the setting and the characters. Beautiful stuff. Art design, fantastic. Everything about this game looks good on paper. When you actually go through it, you're like, something's not. It doesn't feel like a Chrono Trigger game. The same way Tides of Numenera did not feel like a Planescape Torment game. There was something off with that.
And I would even say the same things about the other Secret of Mana games compared to the first.
Yeah, same idea. It's very similar. In fact, extremely similar. The Seiken Densetsu 3, I thought, was very close. And everything else after that is nowhere near as close as 3 was.
Yeah. But it's mainly with 3, it's mainly that the battle system is so different. That it makes it feel like
they didn't have to do that.
Different game.
Yeah, they did not have. All they had to do was copy the original battle system.
Yeah.
And have multiple characters, and they would be just fine. Anyway, we're talking about Super Nintendo and PC games, but I'm sure you guys have some games that you were influenced by that you would consider, this is probably one of the greatest gaming experiences, story-wise, that I've had. And I have multiple ones, but I'm sure you guys can share.
Yeah. Knights of the Old Republic too.
I knew you were going to say that. I just knew.
Yeah. Like, I just like, I don't know. Like, I know that like the gameplay is fully garbage for today's standards, but it's just like, I don't know. Like it just like Star Wars just can't get any better than that, honestly. And it's just like kind of lame that like it doesn't even like nothing gets close to it nowadays for like decades now. What else? Like I think the first Deus Ex is also like really notable. Like I liked what Human Revolution was doing, but like I would say like the first one was just like, I don't know, like there's nothing that I could like name that is just similar and could have done the same themes and like storytelling as that one. It was like lighting in the bottle because like the sequel was made by the same people and they just didn't know like what the hell they should do with it.
Deus Ex, for you guys don't know the original, was one of those, because I think that at the time Half-Life just came out as well. I can't remember what else was coming
97 or 8 for Half-Life 1 and 2000 for Deus Ex, because they not predicted, but like they didn't include the two towers in New York City, and like a year afterwards, like the terrorist attack happened.
Oh dear. Okay, so I'm trying to remember, because that game was so influential, and people were like, this is just a silly little RPG. It's like, no. You could do 3 different pathways of playing, and the storyline is crazy. And you're like, what's going on?
Like they thought out of so many of those possibilities you could do in that game. It's just crazy. Even the first level.
Yeah.
All right. Anyone else that they remember a game that they were heavily influenced by, whether it was emotional attachment or it was story-wise or gameplay-wise? Like, what was the thing that really snickered you in?
One that really got me was it's always going to be Dragon Age Origins. I still get attached to that. I can still play that over and over again, and the story still grabs me each time. I just don't know. It's really hard to explain.
I agree.
I'll start up. I'll know exactly what's going to happen, but it's like I'm so invested.
There's something
just so enjoyable
with the tone as well. I always say this about the music at the campsite.
Yes.
Whenever you're done your mission or whatever your quest is, you always go back to the same campsite. Everyone's there. Like, okay, I'll go talk to them, and they always have something funny or interesting or obnoxious to say.
Yeah.
It's kind of like it's kind of like Star Trek.
Yeah, it is. But it's also good because they actually do reference other people in your party with things they talk about. I mean, notice you do things.
That's what I think the 7 or 8 hours, or sorry, 7 or 8 years that they spent making Origins, like it was just on. Okay, what happens if you have this character now? What would they say? Or maybe if you didn't have this character, and they have all these branching narratives just for talking.
It always got me. I can't remember who said it, but obviously I always go for a Morrigan romance because Morrigan's my girl. But it always gets me to go like, how do you know that me and Morrigan are together? It's like, what? Do you think none of us could hear her wailing like a banshee in the night? And it just made me laugh. But because we're actually we're all together while this is happening, and of course they're gonna hear all these things. But it's just small little. I think it's like Win or something. She sticks her nose in all your relationships. But it's just a way that the game just connects. But whenever I hear the camp music, I always feel a bit like I feel secure. I feel like I just feel relaxed. I just feel relaxed when I hear it. It's like I've done the difficult battle. I can just kick my feet up and just enjoy company of friends and companions.
What I have noticed over the years, and this is just my observation of the BioWare games, is that people who have had difficulty in life, some sort of trauma, maybe they lost their parents in a car accident or what have you, and they're going through a rough time, and then they play these games and they just start crying over a mission or a quest, and they really identify with these characters for whatever reason, whether it's the cinematic quality or the music, I don't know, and they attach themselves so closely to that. And I think that's great. I think any form of art that can elucidate some element of catharsis out of your experience with it is great. It doesn't necessarily mean the art form is good. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's high drama or this or that.
Yeah, I was going to say that the one character that I really do connect with is Hawk from Dragon Age 2. No, but seriously,
of course, I just knew that you would say that.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say Dragon Age 2 is even a good game. It's an okay game if you just let your mind go. But his character always, I don't know why I connect so much to him. It's just I just see some. It's not seeing myself in him, but it's just it's very difficult to describe.
I think the way that I put it was that the way that they tried to give a morality system in Mass Effect, they made a personality system in Dragon Age 2 because it's not necessarily about morals. The same way the rivalry friendship system was also handled very well.
A nice, yeah.
And you had the freedom to be goofy. You had the freedom to be serious. You had the freedom to be nice, as opposed to Mass Effect, which is like
be good or bad.
I am good.
Or bad.
Yeah,
okay.
There's only two options. There's no middle option, even though they say there is. It doesn't. No one chooses that anyway. So the person, and this is what we want in a role-playing game with voice acting. You want to choose, and this is why I always say Alpha Protocol and Deus Ex, the Human Revolution, does such a good job with the communication or the dialogue systems, because you can change people's lives with those things.
Yeah.
And that system was really well implemented.
Especially when you have like pheromones and all kinds of other crazy things happening on Deus Ex, and
it was so engaging as well. Like I was amazed.
Yeah,
I think that is why I connect to Hawk a little bit, because when you play the sarcastic route, he does respond like someone's like, "What the hell's going on? Why are people doing it? Why is everyone insane? Can we just like not be insane for 5 minutes?"
You know what? I think that's a healthy example of a writer when he's able to laugh at his own dialogue or scene and just say, "What the hell is this? This is a joke, right?" So if it's a joke, I'm gonna play along, and he keeps playing along.
It's just like Meredith asks her to see it. "Oh, you're looking lovely today, Meredith. That headgear really does go with the rest of your suit." And it's just like, yeah, she's just all dressed up in armor all the time. They're just making fun of her for never changing. It's like there's no reason for him to say these things. He's like, "Yeah, go on."
Oh, it's great. Like, I like money. You should give me money.
I like money. You should give me money.
Of all the silly things
I like being paid. But it's also like at the end, like Orsino and Meredith are arguing, and he just walks up and goes, "The way you two carry on, people will talk." And just like he's not taking any of this seriously, because it's like this is all stupid. But it does. That is one way that a character somehow stuck with me. And but again, I'm not going to say that the game was great. I'm just going to say it's like what Wisp said earlier. There's little parts that that come together with stuff. And I think that one part of that game was really well done. It's just a problem that 98% of the rest of it was pretty bad. It's like now I'm going through a Red Dead Redemption 2, and I think Arthur Morgan is really well done as a character. And I think I think in years to come he'll be looked back as a good video game protagonist, and a good sign of how good. I mean, Red Dead 2 is an amazing game, and I believe this is really close to art. Just the world they created and the story and what you can do in it. That people should look back at this in 5 or 10 years and go, you know what, this is like a gold standard for where games should be at.
Yeah, they talk about Red Dead Redemption 2, Batman Arkham City, I think.
Yeah.
Alan Wake pops up.
Oh, Alan Wake. Oh, I keep trying to explain people should try Alan Wake, and it's a good story, and I'm disappointed it didn't get a sequel, because that would have actually helped the game. But it's an interesting game.
A lot of people bring up Spec Ops: The Line a lot as a form of art.
Yep.
Half-Life 2, just because of its impact. So there's lots of reasons to like these games as well as stories or experiences. So I think video games have that wonderful combination of things.
Where else could you spend at least 100+ hours in just one world doing stuff. You're struggling to find a movie series or a TV series that's got 100+ hours of stuff. Do you know what I mean? Where you're making all the inputs. You know what I mean? Where you feel that you're actually fully part of it.
You take the investment of a reader reading a series by a writer, as well as the interaction of a sport, and the drama of a daytime soap opera, I guess, in some cases.
Yeah. So
anyway.
it's like, But,
Sorry,
I dragged on that. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I do that all the time, so if someone else does. It's just one I'd like to throw in, though it's not one of the worthy RPGs, one of the action adventures. And while I like Ocarina of Time way more in regards of atmosphere and everything, Majora's Mask left an impression with me that when I played it, I couldn't finish it. It was emotionally too hard for me at time I played it. I couldn't get through the desert, and partially also because one of the side quests, I think it's even a necessary one, where you need to give all the Gyptos their special things, and need to travel around the world to fetch them right away. And I had trouble with a couple of those, and it was really frustrating because due to the time constraint, you have to start over. That was the annoying part, but otherwise it was emotionally really dark. It was well written, good way, but at the same time, I think my grandmother died, and around that time, and that made the game even harder because it isn't explicit about it, but it does but it does go through many topics relating to grief and loss and all of these horrible things, which the intro already shows, where Link loses Epona. Link already had lost at the end of Ocarina of Time. He had to part with Navi. And the game just keeps going on with this all of the dread, all of the pressure, and I think Majora's Mask, although one at some point I will have to finish that up just for peace of my own soul. Is one of those really rare games that experimented a lot and did it well, pulled off something amazing in the process. That is also not a simple story. There's Majora's Mask, like the Saga games and Xenoblade games, dabble a lot in philosophy beneath the surface that you just play around. And yeah, in hindsight, it's interesting that the Zelda series has two of these games that were just complete experiments and passion projects in a way, which is Link's Awakening being the first one. That wasn't planned. It was just a passion project of one of the developers. And Majora's Mask. And they both turned out into these absolute pieces of wonder in their own way. And yeah, I have to address that scar at some point, because that game left one. It frustrates me that I never finished it.
All right. Well, again, I could talk about all kinds of games I loved throughout the years, and Vampire the Masquerade, Bloodlines is one of my favorites.
Cedar still hasn't played that, by the way.
That's why she's not here. Like she cannot come on this stream until then.
I'm gonna reinstall it probably, just because it's driving me nuts. It's just I gotta go back.
Can you replay it as Malkavian and appreciate the dialogue?
Well, you have to. Whenever you play it twice. You play it as whatever you like, and then you play Malkavian. So
yeah, your character is predicting the game.
It's great,
and you don't know.
Amazing.
You don't know. This is well, I'm weird. This is why I liked playing Malkavian first, because I couldn't put the pieces together. They gave a more authentic feeling in that. If I had played something else before, I'd know the story in advance and would see the reflections in the Malkavian dialogue. But that way, I could just wait. There was a dialogue option for that predicted this or something, or one I chose, and oh my god, what is going on here? I like that.
All right, folks.
I understand it's not for everyone.
I think that's everything. Anyone else? I guess we're fine talking about games. We're going to have other streams about video games. We talk about those specifically. So thank you so much for tuning in. That wasn't too bad. I think the video was pretty decent as far as Nostalgia Critic goes. Pretty good, actually. So
yeah.
Nice job, Doug Walker.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you guys real soon. Have yourself a good evening, folks. Bye-bye now.
Bye.